We are here to discuss our concerns about a decision that may be forthcoming, it looks like it will be forthcoming, regarding the possible transfer of a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier from Norfolk, Virginia down to Mayport, Florida. This is being done at the very end of an administration. We believe it is ill-timed, it is ill-advised, it is not supported by economic logic or strategic logic. We represent, I think, a variety of different viewpoints, all here obviously from the Commonwealth of Virginia.
In a sense, this is a mini type of end run, but it doesn't have the structure, it doesn't have the precedents, it doesn't have all the other parts of the BRAC law which are put in place to ensure that the interests of each of the 50 states is best protected as it can, and, most importantly, the overall strategic interests of not just one branch of the military service, but all branches of the military service are taken into consideration.
This is a very clear case, and I would say this in the same spirit that Senator Warner just said it, as someone who also has spent 5 years in the Pentagon and who has spent my entire adult life discussing military policy, military planning, in having served as Assistant Secretary of Defense and Secretary of the Navy. First of all, there is no economic logic to this proposal, and particularly at a time right now where we are in such an economic crisis in this country. Along with this proposal would come unfunded upfront costs just to move a nuclear carrier down to Mayport that approach $1 billion. That's unfunded at this time. At the same time, the Navy has come forward with a budget saying that they have $4.6 billion in unfunded priorities already. These are what they call requirements, $4.6 billion of unfunded requirements. And Naval Station Norfolk, in the past several years, has received $400 million in funds invested in enabling it to perform the same mission that they are talking about sending down to Mayport, Florida. And finally, our naval shipyard down in Norfolk now is $224 million short in the type of emergency funds that we need to get it going in order to continue to produce the quality of shipbuilding that we do down in Norfolk. So in economic terms, when I talked to the Chief of Naval Operations, I said there are a lot of things that we might like to have for the United States Navy today. I'd like to see a 600-ship Navy. We had a 568-ship Navy when I was Secretary of the Navy. I think we had an 800-ship Navy when Senator Warner was a Secretary of the Navy. We've got about 279-ship Navy today. You're not going to see a 600-ship Navy, and this is a nice to have. This isn't something that is essential to the performance of the Navy's functions. With respect to the strategic argument, there is no strategic necessity for us to send an nuclear aircraft carrier down into Mayport. As Senator Warner so aptly pointed out, the Navy's analysis that was presented to us the other day was flawed and incomplete. We can go into that in detail. We're happy to provide the documents. I don't think there would be a problem with that. In the matrix that they used, even with the matrix that they used, the balance between Norfolk and Mayport on the strategic grounds that they were offering were very marginal. There really wasn't that much difference. And by the way, for those of you who are from Virginia, you'd be interesting to note that the Navy's analysis maintained that Norfolk was every bit as much endangered by hurricanes as Jacksonville, Florida. I find that a little bit hard to assimilate myself, but that was a part of their presentation. They make an argument about strategic dispersion, the idea of sending ships to different places to protect against attack. That was a great argument in World War II when the Japanese had to split their kamikaze planes and, to go after different targets. It had some validity in the age of Soviet Union, Cold War. It has no validity today. when we're talking about the technology that is needed to protect assets against international terrorism. The more targets you have, the more technology, the more technological assets you have to use in order to protect them. And the Navy study ignored a couple of other things. One was the fact that there are 3 West Coast facilities to handle nuclear carriers if something were to happen in Norfolk, which is the possibility of that is minute. Another part of the Navy study that I found incomplete was they only focused on nuclear aircraft carriers in terms of their options for trying to do something down in Norfolk. So for all of those reasons, and for the fact that we're talking about dislocating families, creating turbulence in our communities right now, even as this process goes forward, we believe this is ill-advised, ill-timed, and something that should be moved to the next administration to be properly considered.
As the governor who worked through, Senator, the last BRAC process, as we dealt with the challenges, Governor Kane remembers the last time Florida made a run at us. And the Navy reflected the needs and value of Oceana. The Commonwealth, Virginia Beach, and others have taken dramatic steps to move forward. And one of the things that repeatedly came out was the synergy of having our jets and the training that goes on in Oceana, the carriers being based in Norfolk, the construction and service and maintenance at Northrop Grumman and Newport News. We're talking here about enormous benefit, both economically and quality of life, for those brave men and women who serve us in the Navy. Being able to have these carriers serviced at Newport News, having the families, the dislocation it could mean to potentially mean to our those pilots and their support services. There's enormous other logic that says we need to keep these carriers based in Norfolk long term. Beyond the fact of how you can make the case with the enormous unmet needs the Navy has at this point, to take up to $1 billion and invest it, then you wouldn't even have this facility in Florida available until 2014. So from an economic standpoint, from a military and strategic standpoint, from an ease of ongoing servicing and quality of life standpoint, this decision is wrong, it's ill-founded, it's ill-timed, and it clearly needs the fresh set of eyes that will be brought by the new administration to make a final determination.
I need not speak more with 2 secretaries of the Navy here about their analysis of the strategic question of whether there is any rationale for moving this carrier. When 2 former Navy secretaries hear the case made and conclude, based on their questioning of Navy personnel, that there is no operational advantage to moving a carrier, I think we can basically say that question has been answered. Second, I don't think there's any dispute about the issue of the economics of it. It is not additional cost to maintain the status quo with the carrier in Norfolk, but the cost is estimated to be, from a capital standpoint, $1 billion, with then additional operating costs to make the move to Mayport. At a time when not only the Navy has a backlog of unfunded projects that are requirements, but we're dealing across the federal government and all state governments with significant budgetary issues, the investment of this kind of money to obtain no strategic advantage when there are other necessary projects ahead of it in line makes no sense. In Virginia, we invested $15 million a year, 7.5 through the city of Virginia Beach, 7.5 through the Commonwealth, to purchase encroaching territories around the master jet base so that we could make sure that Navy operations were protected. And that has been part of the work that we've always done with the Navy to try to make sure that Navy operations in Hampton Roads continue. In Jacksonville, there was a citizen referendum where the citizens opposed reopening Cecil Field. And so just within the last year and a half, we have an example of sort of a similar question where Virginia stepped up, made investments, and the citizens of the area, when asked about the reopening of Cecil Field, said no. Similarly, other recent history, the Navy has done an EIS recently about the placement of Zumwalt-class destroyers at Mayport. And the EIS determined that that was an unwise thing because of the upfront cost to upfit Mayport for that class of ship. Now, I'm not a former Secretary of the Navy, but carriers are bigger than destroyers, and I wouldn't suspect that if it was not suitable for destroyer placement, it would suddenly be more magically suitable for carrier placement. We in Virginia value our connection with the military, obviously our installations, as well as our active duty sailors, soldiers, Marine, airmen. We value veterans. We work in tandem with these installations to make sure that they can carry out the compelling national mission that is their purpose. And I echo the comments of the senators and Senator-elect Warner when I say that a decision of this magnitude and this cost with no apparent strategic advantage should not be made in the outgoing weeks of an administration.
We're not going to lose this carrier. We signed a letter asking Secretary Gates to put a hold on this whole process. I would hope that President-elect Obama might ask for a similar delay. I think that we're not asking him to take sides in the issue, but it's something that we certainly believe strongly needs greater scrutiny than was presented in this Navy's case. As Senator Warner so succinctly put it, the facts are so clearly on our side in this.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a strong factual case, and it's in the best interest of this country that this decision not be taken under this type of procedure and at this time. And I think we rushed our case on that. You put it to whoever you wish to. If I could just take a moment, this will be my last press conference in all probability. And many times have I had the privilege of addressing the press and many others in this room under the picture of a very famous man that I was privileged to know. I'll give you a point of story about him. When I was Secretary of the Navy, I came up one day. I was a brash, arrogant, 42-year-old youngster. And I was pushing around. I wanted to get this done for the Department of the Navy. And he very patiently listened to me. And he said, I've looked at your record. You have an unusual one. You served both in the Navy and the Marine Corps. And I said, yes, sir, I did. Yes, sir. He said, any historical precedent? I said, not to my knowledge, sir. He said, I think that's interesting, Mr. Secretary. I may be the only majority leader who served in the Army, the Navy, and the Marines. Get that? He took me off at the knees. I mean, I stumbled out of that room. But as I leave, Virginia's had a long tradition of caring for, providing for, in every other way, the men and women of the armed forces, going back to the very fundamental opening days of this great republic and the struggles that we had to make and keep this republic. And the Virginia congressional delegation have worked together as a team, a bipartisan team on national defense. And I'm confident that as I leave, my two colleagues will continue to perpetuate that strong effort on behalf, not just for selfish or economic interests of Virginia, but for the pride of Virginia and how that state has sent to Congress generations of members who have cared for and will continue to care for the men and women and to see that America remains strong. Harry Byrd Jr. was on the Armed Services Committee when I came. Chuck Robb served on the committee with me. And now my dear friend, who has been a friend of mine for 35 years, he will carry on as strong or even stronger than I have had on the committee, looking out for the interest of the United States of America first and foremost, but always keeping one eye open and watchful on behalf of the Commonwealth. Thank you.